Okay.
Hey, for me,
Okay.
you know.
That morning glow, huh?
Thank you.
Good,
Appreciate that.
Awesome. In 3, 2, 1. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the Agents of Recovery podcast. So good to have you here. So great to have all of you downloading, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. And if you're so inclined, please jump on and leave us a review. It helps us move this podcast forward, get into the ears of those who truly need it, and really helps us pump out a quality product here. As always, Coach Blue Robinson here, mental health therapist at your service with the other two co-hosts of the Agents of Recovery podcast, Brock Bevel. How you doing today, Brock?
Man, it's been a good week, dude. I know it's only kind of Tuesday, but it's been nice, man. So I'm happy to be here. Hey, it's kind of cool hitting it in the morning. Let's go.
Let's get it on. And always, Max Hall, how you doing, my man?
Man, I'm good. Got up a little early this morning, got my stuff done. We had our football banquet last night, so that was kind of cool, but kind of sad saying goodbye to seniors, you know. But kind of the final cap of the season. Great season, though. It was a fun night.
That is flipping rad. That would be kind of hard saying goodbye after such an amazing experience for all those years of dedication, huh?
Oh, dude, and you spend so much time with these kids. I mean, even in the off season, you're always working, and so then all of a sudden it's like, boom,
They're gone.
they're gone. You know, it's kind of a weird deal, and then you just have to focus on the next group. But you get so close with them, and you spend so much time with them, they almost feel like my kids sometimes. So it's like, man, it sucks to see them go, but then you're excited about the new crop. So got to focus on that. But yeah, it's always a little sad.
Absolutely. Well, listeners, today we're going to do something a little bit different. We do these from time to time, and that is taking questions from you, the listeners. We have several questions that have been submitted that we want to touch base on because I think that they're universal in feeling. And so, you guys cool with jumping into this today?
Yeah, let's go. These are pretty in-depth questions, though, man.
They are. So this one comes from an athlete, and he speaks highly of the Agents podcast, and he has a question for us. He says, you know what, guys, how long did it take for you guys to feel better physically, better emotionally, better mentally? This is a situation I think that, they all don't kind of click in at once, do they? I mean, each of these, I think, assets and qualities, they kick in at different times. But for you guys, do you remember when you first started coming, back to ground level, feeling better physically, emotionally, mentally? Brock, let's start with you.
Ooh, man, hearing this, I immediately thought physically I came around quick. Mentally and spiritually, it took me some time. And what's interesting is I now have a lengthy recovery, and I still feel like my spirituality is probably now one of the stronger, but my mental is like, that's the one that's always being challenged. Does that make sense? Because we put these things in place to assure success, but mentally, man, like, for example, my alarm clock in the morning is a suggestion, right? It's merely a suggestion. And then I have that decision. Are you getting out of bed or are you going to stay in bed? And so for me, I think those decisions, we vacillate all day long on, are we going to stay sober? Are we going to make the next right decision? So I think at first it was very difficult, but even today, dude, 12 years later, I think there's still some of that. Like, am I going to, now the sobriety time's over, but am I going to be the dad I need to be? Am I going to be the husband I need to be? Am I going to be the employee I need to be? And these are all decisions that play into those original decisions.
Matt, that's flipping rad, Brock. Max, what do you think, man? How long did it take?
That's well said, and I think we're very similar in that aspect. Physically, I kind of started feeling better after a month, but it really wasn't. It was about 3 months where I really felt, physically I was back. And, I was coming off of not only, Oxy and heroin, but that buprenorphine from the Suboxone, which the half-life is a lot longer, right? So physically, I felt like crap for a whole month. And then the clouds started kind of going away, and I was able to get back. But really, it took 3 months, and that's usually what it takes with that kind of opiate takes 3 months to fully get out of your system and for you to start feeling better. And then that's when I got big into working out. You know, I've talked about the counselor I had in there. I don't think he'd mind me using his name, but Chris Ruckert, who was this big, just bodybuilder type guy, he got me into the gym, and then I started rolling from there. And then it's like, you know, physically, I've told you guys this before, but I don't want to look anything like I did before when I was using. So now physically, I'm like, that's a big thing for me. I have to look opposite of that drug addict in that mugshot. So that's what keeps me motivated physically. Spiritually and emotionally, mentally, I'm still working on it, man. Like my confidence was shot, completely shot. You know, I felt like I lost all credibility. No one really wanted me to speak. If I did, I would be a hypocrite, sort of a thing. I mean, just in the last year, that's really kind of started to come back. And I talked about how, like, Brock, when I did your podcast before we started this one, and then the first couple podcasts that we did here, bro, my anxiety was through the roof. My heart's beating out of my chest. I can't breathe. But I felt that confidence slowly start to come back. Mentally, there's still things I'm working on. I'm in a way better headspace than what I was, 6 years ago or whatever. And that's continued to get better to where there's trust back in the relationship. And I feel like mentally I'm not thinking about drugs all day. You know what I mean? I'm in a better space. But it's still something that I have to focus on and think about every single day. So I don't think the emotional, mental part of it ever stops. I think it's something you continue to work on. Physically, that came back, and now I'm able to do everything I can to stay in shape that way. But, man, you wouldn't think for a guy like me who spoke in front of thousands of people at firesides, press conferences, all that, to get to the point to where if I had to say a prayer at the family dinner, my heart would just start going. And it was so unnatural for me. It freaked me out. So I've been able to work through that. I'm in a lot better space, but it takes time and it takes persistency and patience. So it's taken a lot to get to where I am. But I don't know, Blue. I'm interested to see what you say, because I know you went through a lot. Yeah. Emotionally and everything with your family. So, I mean, what was that like for you?
It's true. And I love listening to both of you guys talk about the stages and the increments and then the learning between it all, because my addiction stopped when I was 23 years old. And so I went through hell until 23, and I was using pretty heavily. And so I don't have the same kind of like issues, so to speak, but the mental health issue, that took years, you guys, because I was ingrained to be trained that I was no good, that I was nothing, I was a nobody. So even though I felt physically strong and I felt like, I had things going emotionally and mentally, I was wrecked. It took years. I mean, it took until I was, probably well into my master's program before I truly believed that I could do some of these hard things. But the crazy part about this too is that for guys that use later on in life, you're going to go through these experiences where you'll have great sobriety, then all of a sudden you're going to feel like you're coming off it again. And that's called post-acute withdrawal symptom. It's called PAWS. Now, this can happen to people. Yeah. I mean, we're talking like years and years and years after the fact. You could be having a great life, doing great, and all of a sudden, boom, out of nowhere, you feel like, man, I'm really feeling down. I feel different. It's post-acute withdrawal symptoms, and that specifically can get people back into relapse because they're like, I feel so bad. I need to kind of associate this craving I've got. What am I going to do? And they go out and they relapse. So these concepts of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, he didn't put spiritual in there, but we got to put it on there. These are all different categories. And so to benchmark each of these in our lives, I think would be fairly difficult. It's a process. But for me, you guys, you're right, Max. For me, it was 110% mental and then emotional that were the most difficult. And emotionally, there's still times when I'm like, imposter syndrome or feeling a little bit down and low, like, man, someone else knows more than me or whatnot. Maybe I'm kind of just a sheep here following the herd. You got to keep working on that forever. I don't think truly emotionally, mentally, that we can kind of overcome this without putting those other attributes in front of it. The spirituality is a big one. physical part gets you there. Mental and emotional were the biggest ones for me. So yeah, that was a rough start. Go ahead.
And I like that you brought up the pause thing because, as I thought about it, especially in my first couple years, man, and I think I've told you guys this before, like once a month, I would go into this weird 2 or 3 day funk where I'm like, I feel like not necessarily like total withdrawal, but like the depression and the tiredness and the lack of motivation. You know what I mean? That would happen to me like once a month. And I knew it would happen. I'd be like, I can't snap out of this. Like, what is wrong with me? I go work out. I do whatever I could. I tell my wife, and she's just, she kind of knew that every once in a while it would hit me. So I'm kind of interested. Like, Brock, I wonder if you went through anything similar to where every once in a while you just all of a sudden dip down, and then it's like really hard to get back up and back level, because I know I struggled with that for years. Not as much now, but I mean, first 2 or 3 years, man, I really struggled with that. I don't know if you experienced that, Brock.
Yeah, I think this is a good question, and I don't think we can put a timeline on it, because let's go back to before addiction. Okay.
Yeah.
We had character defects. We had flaws in who we were as individuals. When we used, those were intensified, right, by the addiction. So if I was an angry individual before addiction, I got into addiction, it fueled that. Now, what's interesting is now that we're sober, we're expecting our lives to be different. Okay, but we had this before. Our usage just either buried it or hid it from us. We didn't see it fueling up. But now we're sober, and all of a sudden, the real Max and the real Brock and the real Blue's coming out, and it's like, whoa, do I really like this guy or who I am? Because we're still the same person. We still have these major character flaws that we had before. And so I think that's where we start feeling low, is like, man, wait a minute. I'm supposed to be getting this. I'm supposed to be healing, but yet I'm still explosive. I'm still getting angry at my kids. I'm still like, and then those are the feelings like, wait a minute, when I was using, was I still the same? And so this pause kind of flips us back and forth. So the time frame, the question that he asked is very, very, very important. But for each one of us, man, we have to master those character defects before we can really master this thing.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, Brock, because I think as soon as you can start doing that, the better you start feeling. But everybody has to do that on their own time. I mean, Blue, I'm sure you meet with lots of people, and I'm sure, obviously everybody's different and their timeline is different. But Brock, I think you're right on with developing and improving those character traits can kind of speed up those feelings, that the depression and stuff that you're having. So I think that's spot on. But Blue, I bet that you have kind of seen that with some of your patients.
Yeah, because everyone wants it to happen now. No one really wants to have to wait and kind of work on these things. Especially in early recovery, we think, well, I haven't used for 2 weeks, so you guys, you should trust me. And emotionally, when they're like, no, we don't, then that kind of takes a hit. You've got to be able to pace yourself. Again, we talk about this a lot. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You've got to be able to get through these long runs. And I think both of you have eloquently described kind of how that was for you, and principles that listeners, you guys need to probably take heed to, so that you don't get disappointed, frustrate yourself, and jump off the ship. I mean, that's one of the biggest things I feel.
Right.
Number 2, Justin. Justin says, hey, do you think that there are relationships that cannot be repaired?
Yes.
Okay, Brock, jump into it. I love it.
There just are, man. I mean, we want to fool ourselves into thinking that in recovery we can heal everything. The problem is we can't control the other person's emotion at all.
Mm-hmm.
So a prime example, my ex-wife. No matter what I can do the rest of my life, I could be the best human being in the world, but I'm still going to be affected. She's still going to be affected by decisions that I made.
Yeah.
And no matter what I do, leaving amends, go talk to her, write it down. It doesn't matter if she's still carrying that weight of the world. And so that's hard to finally accept, but you have to, I think in this real recovery, you have to get to the point to where you have to ask yourself, can I continue to heal through this? Because making amends is a big component. Yeah. And we feel like, well, if I can't make amends to that person, then my recovery is a failure. No, it's not.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Look at the life of Jesus, man. People, I mean, he didn't make amends with everybody, and people didn't love him. So it's the same thing with us, is we be the best person we can be, and those amends that we can't fix, let them go.
Dude, I love it. Max, what do you think? Relationships, do you think there are some that can't be repaired?
100% agree with Brock. Some you just got to let go. And it ends up being better for you, for the other person, to be able to move on, because sometimes the damage is done. People come to me and Kenzie all the time and ask for our advice, or they're going through something. And Kenzie and I are not therapists, you know what I mean? We are not you guys. So what we do is we just share our experience, and we encourage you to at least try, right? At least try and do your part. Try to make that amends. And if it doesn't work and it's not received, then you have to be okay that you're going to move on from that relationship. You can't let it destroy you, because I've seen some people who have gone through it and either have stayed too long and they're still trying to make it work, and they're flat out miserable. And everybody from the outside looking in can totally see this is not healthy, you know? And who knows, maybe that relationship gets separated for a while, and maybe we can come back to it. I don't know. Maybe it gets separated and then you realize, hey, I'm a better person outside of this. But I know a lot of people have a hard time letting that go. I mean, I think if, you know, Kenzie and I were lucky. We tried it. She says, we're going to try this and fight, and it ended up working out. But if it didn't, I would have had to have been okay with moving on and giving her that space and hopefully trying to find a better place, you know, away from each other. And that's just how it goes. But Brock, as long as, like with your ex-wife, as long as you did your part, then it's on the other person to accept that or decline. Yeah. But you can at least be at peace that you did your part to try to make that amend and make it work, right?
Okay, so let me throw this out here to you guys then. With this process, there are some people, like, we try to salvage certain relationships out of whatever reason. Let's say codependency. I believe that a lot of relationships we try to continue with because we're the codependent of that person. So we try to force it and make it work. Sometimes the best healing is separation.
Yeah.
We got to let it go, right? Because we both know, all of us know people that are in relationships that we can look at and say, man, they would be better off if they just cut ties.
Yeah.
And they're toxic for each other, and they can never fully heal because they're so intertwined and it's so dysfunctional that they can't really heal from this, and it always reverts back into bad behaviors. So, I mean, I know people that I'm thinking about right now that are hearing this, man, and I hope that they could get to a point where, like, listen, it would be better if we just cut time and not try to make amends, because usually when making amends, people think they want to fix the relationship. And don't get that twisted. It's not about fixing relationships. It's about trying to make it right in your mind that what I did was wrong and I need to apologize for it.
Yeah,
but it doesn't mean we need to get back in bed with each other.
You're right, man.
Right? But in active addiction, we think that, man.
Absolutely. You are spot on.
And we think that we can't go on without that relationship, and that's where you're wrong, right,
well,
Luke?
yeah. And as Brock's talking, and Max, what you just said, it reminds me of this joke I heard one time when I was in detention by this stupid coach we had that was, I always thought he was the funniest guy alive. He said there was a kid that once got community service for a crime he committed, and the officer took him out in the middle of nowhere, and his job was to paint the yellow lines on the road. And The first day he painted 5 miles of lines, and the cop came, picked him up, and said, "Hey, great job, man. You started off really well." The next day he comes out, puts him to work. The kid only gets like 2 miles. And the guy's like, "Man, 5 miles the first day, 2 miles the next. You're slowing down, but great job." The third day he comes out, he got like 500 yards. The cop's like, "Dude, I don't know what's your problem. The first day 5, the second day 2, and now 500 yards." And the guy says, "Yeah, man, that can keeps getting further and further away." And I think of this mindset as if that person is the paint can. And as you're progressing and you keep coming back to try and get them to come with you, but they stay there, you get to this thing called the point of no return. It's too far to go back than it is to keep going, right? And I love what you just said, Brock, because that put that in my mindset of like, you know what? Sometimes there'll be positions in life where you're having these relationships that they're not going to follow you, or they choose not to because the damage has been so severe that they take my advice that it's a privilege to have a relationship with you. It's not a right. And so if you keep violating that privilege, you no longer have the right. So I do believe that there are relationships that cannot be salvaged, but I love the fact that you guys kept using the term amends. And so I thought, well, what I know what they are, but what is the definition of amend? This is actually kind of funny. I've never thought of it this way. The definition of amends is to make minor changes in order to make a more fair and accurate, up-to-date decision. And you can boil it down to that, like a fair. That doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. Making amends doesn't mean that it's going to be, hey, forgiven and forgotten. It's making something so that you're taking accountability for your part, and then to make it a little bit more fair. That's it. And I think I've never really thought about it like that, because in my head, amends meant, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. Please forgive me. Let's go now. That's not what it is it? Brock?
No, absolutely not, man. Because what happens if that person doesn't forgive you? Then what?
Yeah.
You're right back where you were chasing that can.
Absolutely. So I guess the choice becomes knowing when.
Hey, and another thing about that, and I want to go back to the codependency part, because I think that's a very, very important part. And early on in my recovery, my day, my attitude, my thoughts, everything depended on Mackenzie.
Yeah.
Right? So I kind of, thought about and concentrated on was making sure that she was happy, because I wasn't happy unless she was. And so, I would clean the house every day. I would do the laundry. I would make dinner. You know what I mean? I wanted it to be perfect because I wanted her to be happy. That way I felt good about getting through the day. Well, that got unhealthy. Yeah. It got, what do they call it? Puppy syndrome, where you're squeezing the puppy too hard. That's what it got to for me. And then it became almost obsessive. What is she doing? Where is she at? Who is she with? Right? That starts going through. She finally was like, sat me down and like, dude, this is bad. Like, I love you and I appreciate everything you're doing, but you got to do more work on yourself. And I'm like, that's so hard. I don't know if I could do it. So we separate. She works on her stuff. I work on my stuff. And then we can come back in a more healthy environment with each other. And when I got rid of that codependency, things were a lot better for me.
But okay, hold on. I'm shaking my head because most people don't have that type of maturity.
Yeah.
Because what would I think about that, Max? You guys as a couple made a decision. Hey, it wasn't a physical separation, right? Like you weren't living in another house. She was, right. You guys were still together. But imagine what would happen if that didn't work for you. You do all these wonderful things for her, and she's like, hey, Max, guess what? I'm out. Mm-hmm. Then what? Yeah. And so that's where, that maturity, that maturation in a relationship kept you guys. That's why you're where you're at today. Most relationships don't end that way in addiction. They're like, dude, there's been so much trauma, so much frustration. It's not mendable. And so I'm out. And then here you are as the addict going, wait a minute. I've made all these amazing changes in my life. I'm sober, but I did it for you.
Yeah.
Right. Now we're in trouble, right? That whole process of why we're sober, our why. And how, man, it all comes back full circle to that right there. That's why you got to do it for you.
That's not sustainable either.
And a good point.
Go ahead, Max.
No, I was just going to say my last point with it, and then you can go, Blue, is if Kenzie hadn't been working on herself individually, I mean, she was the one that brought it up, not me. So I was just lucky that she was working on herself enough to where she understood what was going on. But if that wasn't happening, dude, I don't know if it would have worked out, because I was so in a weird mental state that if she would have been like, I don't think this is going to work, I'm out, I don't know if I'd have stayed sober.
Yeah.
Spiral.
Like, you know what I mean? I'd have been like, I did all this, just like you said, Brock. I did everything I was supposed to, and you're still out? Screw this. So that's why it can't be for somebody else, just like you're saying. It's got to be for you first, and then you're okay with what might happen to you, but at least you're okay and at peace inside. Otherwise, it won't work.
Yeah, well, listeners, listen to the humility that's being discussed here. And I think if you're in this position, and I know the person that asked this question, if you're in this position, you have to understand that you earned your position there. Whatever happened, you earned it. And so you can't expect other people to just fall into place when you start feeling better. I love the freaking principle you guys are speaking here, because let's get real. When this is all said and done, it is 100% on your plate to either make the amends to build the relationships, or to say, you know what, I really did screw this one up royally. I respect your decision. It hurts, but I understand. And that's a whole nother process of healing. I mean, Brock, you've gone through divorce. That was never easy. It couldn't have been. So how in the world, you had to have taken accountability at one point, even though it hurt, correct?
Yeah, actually, let's get that right twice. I've been divorced.
Did it get easier?
I'm the reigning champion on this board here, guys, okay? Let's be honest. No, man, it sucked. It sucked bad, because I had to take ownership. And you know what? I had to take all the ownership. And everybody's like, well, it's not 100% you. Well, it was 100% of my part.
Yeah.
And so I had to take ownership, and I know that I wish things would have turned out different for me, but I can't be there anymore. You know what I mean? Like, do I wish my kids had to suffer so much? Absolutely not. But I guess maybe I'm just seeing through a rose-colored glasses. Like, had I not gone through all that, I don't think I'd be sitting here on this podcast getting to share this wisdom with people.
Absolutely. Yeah. So literally, like listeners, that's a great question, and it's rough, but follow some of the principle here. Take some of that accountability. Take the ownership. Give that other person time. Be cautious. And we agents, we're going to do a deep dive on codependency, because that is a huge component to all this. So stay tuned, listeners. The next question, fairly similar but a little bit different. Okay. And this one comes from Amanda. And she says, hey, are there mistakes that you feel like you can't make amends for? So we're moving from relationships to things that we've done, actions we've taken, things that have happened. We're talking about maybe lying, manipulating, infidelity, continued drug use, secrets, all this stuff. Do you guys believe there are mistakes that we cannot make amends for? Max, let's start with you, brother. What do you think?
Yeah. Honestly, I do. I think depending on the situation and the purpose, I think you can do something and the other party sees it as unforgivable. Bottom line, I think it just depends. And you guys might have a different opinion, but if you're with your spouse and whatever, you end up cheating on her or whatever, and for some people that's unforgivable.
Yeah.
Like, you've broken that trust, and they don't think going forward that trust can ever be amended. And sometimes it does, and it is able to come back over time. But then that relationship might become so toxic that it's better off to move on. And just like Brock is a great example, he's had to do it twice. And look, he's got Mare now, and they're doing great. And he's in a much healthier, happier place than maybe if he'd have tried to stick it out with one of his previous marriages. So, I mean, I'm interested to see, because Brock, you got some experience with this, but I think sometimes the damage is done, and it is better off to go in different directions, Brock.
Blue, ask that question to how she wrote it. Give that to me again.
Yeah, man. And I think that's it's a heavy one. And so she says, hey guys, are there mistakes that you feel like you cannot make amends for?
So I'm going to take it a little bit different than the way Max did. Do I agree that with the other party? For example, my first wife, I had an affair on her. I'm not. That's not a secret. Is she ever going to forgive me? No. But do I receive forgiveness from myself from what I've done? Yes. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I believe that I can, no matter what I've done, I have a relationship with Christ. And I know, and what's funny is I've heard people say, oh, that's an out for you. Like, that's easy just to say, hey, you've given it to God and you're forgiven now. Look at her. She's gone through 18 years of a tumultuous life. You know what? But I think each one of us has accountability on these things. And so all I can do, so to answer her question is yes, I believe we can, there's nothing that we can't overcome. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, that other person might not accept it. They might not agree, but am I worried about that? I mean, honestly, I'm throwing that question to you guys. Do I have to get to a point where I have to worry about my ex-wife? And I want everybody to know she's a great lady. I'm not saying anything negative about her. Our relationship has gotten better over the years with the kids, but does she forgive me for those acts? No. Okay. But do I have to carry that forever? No. Because I have the ability to receive grace and forgiveness for what I've done in my personal life. Now, was it easy? Was it just sitting down and praying to God and saying, "Hey, God, okay, I'm going to give this to you. It's yours." No, man. It was years of torment and shame and crap and like. So I feel like I've went through it, and so not. I understand where Max was going on that, but I feel like in recovery there gets to a point for us to heal. To answer a question, for us to heal and take that next step, we have to come to the point to where we forgive ourselves for what we've done. Because if we don't, we can't move forward.
Yeah.
We're always going to reach back to that pail of paint and go backwards.
Yep. Well, what you're talking about, Brock, is radical acceptance. And that's when you stop fighting the reality of the what is, and you stop responding to those impulsive, destructive behaviors that aren't really going to go your way. And it gets you out of that cycle of being bitter and keeping that suffering going. Radical acceptance is kind of an intense thing, but that doesn't equal the other person being that same way too. You're not in control of their emotions. And I love this. And I'm glad you had me go back and read this, because there's one word in there that's going to shift this whole thing for me. And that's, do you feel? No. Sorry, guys. It's kind of funny coming from a therapist. Feelings are stupid. I want to know if she would have said, guys, do you think there are mistakes we've made that can't have amends made? That's a whole different thing, because thinking and feeling are very different, right? If we feel amends can't be made, that means that we're having some kind of inner turmoil that's like, oh, I don't feel as though I could engage in this because my feelings are going to get hurt. That's crap. Look at the other side of that coin. If I said, do you think there are? I would say, well, it depends on who you're looking at, because who are we truly living this life for? Other people or for ourselves? And what I mean by that is, if we can take 100% accountability, radical acceptance of our part, it is not up to us, to the other people that forgive us or don't. That is on them. And I'm not, and like you said, Brock, that's the easy way out. No, it's not. Self-forgiveness is one of the most difficult things. Shoot, our last podcast in studio, we raked Brock across the coals because of this. And it's like,
I've
no,
had to
man.
seek therapy last week for that too. I just want you guys to know that.
Yeah, man. It's like thoughts and feelings are funny, but I'm with you both. I see both perspectives of this. It really boils down to yourself. Do you think you can be forgiven for what you've done? And if you're okay with doing the process of either surrendering yourself spiritually or doing those amends to make yourself in a position where you can look yourself in the mirror as Brock's done, then I can say yes. But you don't have stewardship on that other person. That's going to be up to them, and they may not.
But Blue, we so want that. We so want that forgiveness from that other person. And when you really think about it, I think this is a tripping point for a lot of individuals in recovery. Mm-hmm. They don't get that acceptance, so then they come back and say, what's the use? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I trying to be faithful? Why am I not looking at pornography? They're not forgiving me. It's like, but that's where that stinking thinking comes in, to where we just create this monster, dude.
Spot on. Spot on. You guys ready for a heavy one?
That wasn't
This
heavy.
is an interesting one. This one's coming off the heels, you guys, of 3 people, 2 athletes and 1 acquaintance of mine who have recently committed suicide. And I just found out on Saturday morning that a friend, a colleague, and a neighbor of mine had just committed suicide. You know, a cohort in the industry. And man, I'm telling you, it's kind of like, what is going on? The question is this. This is from Garrett. He says, guys, I'm on the verge of giving up. What's the point when nothing seems like I'm worth a damn? That's a hard question, because it's like, I'm on the verge of giving up. What's the point when I'm on the verge? Guys, what do you think the point is of enduring to the end, not throwing in the towel? Don't take the knee yet. Don't take the time out yet. You know, don't skip the team. What do you guys think the point is?
Max, I'm throwing this to you, Max.
Goodness gracious.
Max,
Max
you were
has got
there,
beads
man.
of
That
sweat
pinnacle, the
coming off
point.
his
You're,
head.
yeah, dude, the pinnacle, the
Bro.
point. What was the point? When you're sitting in the back of that cop car, you're like, what the hell's the point?
That's not a fun place
No.
to be. Lucky for me, I had motivation through family, friends. I felt like I still had a life that I had kids. I had things to motivate me. Now, I still had to figure out, like we just talked about, how to get sober for me and not them. Just use them as motivation, but that's not the core reason of why I'm doing it. But I think of somebody who lost their family, maybe, lost their job, feel like they've done everything right, but it doesn't matter. So you get to that point of saying, what's the point? Or for me, it's the F it. You know what? F this. And that either means I go back to using, or, I take the selfish route and say, I don't want to be here anymore. That's a dark place to be. And I don't think there's an answer that fits everybody. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I think it's such a complicated deal. And I can sit here and say, well, it's because your life has value and you need to have self-respect and be grateful for what you've been given in your life. Well, that's way easier said than done when you're at that point. And so I don't know if I have an exact answer.
What was the point for you?
Other than, other than if you're at that point, okay, you've got to sort of figure out or find something in life that you can hold on to. Mm-hmm. And if you've lost everything, maybe that is you get to start over. You get to create something new. Maybe that is doing a complete soul searching and figuring out what your purpose in life is. And that is, again, easier said than done. I'm stumbling on this one a little bit because it's so hard to answer. That's so deep. But I would tell this listener who submitted the question that I would probably do my best to find and create something new that you can get excited about going forward. So, Brock, I'm anxious to hear what you say, because
Listen,
that's
man,
a tough
is
one,
this
man.
Garrett? Is his name Garrett? Did you say? Mm-hmm. Listen, Garrett, I'm going to talk to Garrett real quick. Garrett, listen up, man. You are not alone in this battle. Every single one of us that have gone through this feel this same moment. But it's a moment. I've always been told if I ever get in a fight, make sure you land on your back. If you get knocked down, land on your back. Why? Because if you can look up, you can get up. Right? If you think about that, always land on your back. And what I want to tell this dude is, listen, man, there are days that suck. There are moments that suck. We all three of us have gone through the suck, but get through it. Mm-hmm. Because when you do get through it and you see the light and you can become that light for other people, you can start changing people's lives. What my man Garrett is doing right now, he's in the ring and he's getting his ass pummeled.
Yeah.
And he's getting hit and he can't cover up and he doesn't know where to go. He doesn't even know where the enemy. And I think we've all been there. Take a step back, man. Take that time out, regroup, find out what the fight's about, why you're being attacked like this, man, and make a plan on how to defend yourself. And honestly, man, it comes down to winning the next hour, winning the next day, and taking these moments and incrementally seeing yourself do the next right thing by staying sober. And you have to find your tribe. You have to find your team, because I guarantee you that Garrett is trying to fight this battle alone.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he doesn't have a support team. What I'm saying is when he needs help, he's not reaching out to help. Listen, if I need help, if I'm really struggling, I'm showing up at Max's door because he's the closest guy to me. He's part of my team. If I show up at his house, he's going to be like, hey, what are you doing here? I just need a soda. I need to hang out. Okay, come on in, man. Sit on my couch. Right? Like, we got to have those plans and those people. And so, but it takes work on our part. I got to do the next step to show up at Max's house, because guess what? If I don't tell anybody about where I'm at, Max doesn't know. He can't help me. But if he knows, he's helping me. Hey, dude, I'm taking off work. Let's go grab lunch, because your life is more important than my work. Right? They're going to forgive me. They're going to give me and so that's what I want to tell Garrett is reach out, dude, to the people you love, show up at their doorstep, tell them what you're feeling. Now, that's why I love this question. This dude's reaching out. He needs people. Show up.
Spot on. Spot on. Go ahead, Max. You had something else.
I was just going to say that's why Brock does what he does right there, man. That answer was perfect. And I stumbled to find that answer. So I just learned something. So thank you, Brock, for doing that. He couldn't be more right. Holy cow. That just blew my mind right there. Like the support team, the figuring it out, a little bit of grit to take action. And I remember my first couple months, people would call me, hey, Max, what are you doing? I'd just be like, well, sitting around not using drugs or drinking, but other than that, I'm freaking miserable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because I wasn't taking those steps and I wasn't communicating with the team, and you know, I didn't have that in place yet. So I mean, it's spot on, Brock. And I know Blue, you probably have something to add on to that. You guys are the professionals here, man. You guys see a lot more of this than me. So
that's human.
See how Blue kind of comments after that.
I like what you said too, Max, about motivation, you know, because I think all of us are motivated by something. It's just kind of difficult at times when you're at your low to find what that something is. You know, I do these presentations where I say, you know, hey, everybody, you know, who wants to go out and run 26.2 mile marathon? And like only one or two crazy people raise their hands. And I'm like, to the rest of the group, I'm like, why aren't you going to do it? And I start poking people like, oh, you know, I'm not fit. I'm not this. I'm not that. You know, oh, you know, running for criminals, all the stuff, right? But I'm like, all right, let's say that there was $50,000 at the end just for you. If you cross that line, they're like, well, yeah, then I would do it. Oh, so you're motivated by something. It's just not that, you know, the medal or the T-shirt at the end of the race. I say buckle down a little bit. Like Brock says, get on that support team. You know, find that motivation. It's in there somewhere. This has been a real struggle for Addict to Athlete lately, as we've lost so many people. And then like I said, like a acquaintance of mine just recently, it's like, I don't really, it's hard to comprehend, because it's like the sun's going to rise tomorrow, you guys, and it's going to be okay. And even the worst place you've ever been is one news cycle away from changing into something else. But I feel, and I truly believe, and I think that the greatest thing about someone in this kind of situation is the comeback. I mean, Max, Brock, what's your favorite football movie?
Ooh,
Think about it.
Remember the Titans comes to mind
Remember
right
the Titans
away.
is a good one. It's about a comeback. What about you, Brock?
I'm probably going to remember the Titans. Since Max stole it, I'm going to go with Rudy.
Comeback story.
Yeah.
Of course.
That's
For the love of the game. That's another, or not for the love of the game. What's the football one? Oh shoot, I'm forgetting the name. I was just talking to somebody about it the other night. Forever Strong. Is that what
Forever
it's
Strong.
called?
Coach Larry Gelwick's brilliant. Absolutely.
Yeah.
See, the greatest thing about these kind of assets are the comeback. It's your second win.
Yeah.
Don't take a knee. Don't leave the field. Don't leave the game. when you have like a possibility to have a second win. That's the best comeback story we've ever seen. Those are the great stories. And I'm a firm believer that every story has a great starting, a really hard struggle, difficult part in the middle, and it ends great. So if you're struggling, if you're having a hard part, you're in the middle. You're not even done yet. The other chapters haven't been written. So, just to put a cherry on top of what Brock's saying and what you've said, I think you both are right. Don't give up yet. Let the sun rise tomorrow. Jump on the team, get yourself surrounded by greatness, find that one sliver of motivation, and then watch that second wind hit you. And then marvel in the comeback. I think it's one of the greatest things ever. I think sometimes we fail and forget like how important some of those principles are. Anything else, Brock?
No, man. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I dig it.
I got, Blue, you brought up something different, and I like how you say catch your second wind.
Yeah.
So just because I can right now, I want to use a mountain bike analogy.
Do it.
With me up on the mountain riding the bike. The worst part of the ride, there's a ride that we love to do. And the first half of the ride is uphill. The second half of the ride is all downhill, right? The worst part of the ride for me is the first 10 to 20 minutes. For whatever reason, because my heart's racing, I'm pounding. I know I got a long way to go to get to the top of the mountain. And it's funny because I seriously, I tell my brother and my dad this all the time when we're riding, I need to catch my second wind. Like, I got to get through that first part until when I kind of get through that and then I catch a second wind, I get a little motivation. I'm feeling a little bit better. And then I get to the top. Right. And when you get to the top and you look back, yeah, that was sucky and it was hard, but man, it feels good to be at the top because now I know I get to go on the fun stuff, on the downhill part. But it's interesting that you brought up the second wind. And I was just thinking about that because that first 10 minutes of the ride, I'm miserable. Yeah. I'm like, gosh, I have a 30-minute climb right here. My legs are I'm joking with my brother. I'm like, I'm already tired, dude. We're 2 minutes in. And he's like, me too. But we catch that second wind, and all of a sudden, it's very weird. The pain almost feels good. Like you're getting a workout, and you're getting better, getting in shape, and then you reach a goal, and you're like, again, we get to the top, and I go, whew, feels good to be here, man. Like, I love this spot because I know the fun's about to come. But just an interesting analogy that I brought up about the second wind, because every time when I necessarily don't think it's going to happen, the second when I catch it. And then it's like, okay, off we go. I'm feeling good now. So, I love that part of it, Blue, because everybody will catch that second wind in their recovery.
Yeah. Spot on. We got time for the last one. You guys ready for this? This is the last one. And I think this is kind of a good one to kind of maybe wrap up a little bit. But I know it's important too. And we kind of thought, man, what is this? And Brock, you rattled yours off right away. And this comes from Lacey. She says, hey, is there a motto or saying that you guys use to get yourself through the hard times? Brock, let's kick you off with this one, brother.
Yeah.
And why? I want to know why it's that one.
So when I was a little kid, when I was 8 years old, I heard the story of the Chase the Vase, the Blue Vase by William Peck. And his response to everything he's ever been given in his life was, it will be done and I will do it. If you give me a charge, if you give me something to do and I tell you I'll do it, it will be done and I will do it. That's my mantra. I've lived by it, and it's kept me safe this long.
Brilliant.
Good one.
Brilliant.
Good one.
Tell me why, though. Why does it resonate with you? Because, I know you, and I know why it does, but listeners, why does that resonate with you so deeply?
Because I've lived. Because that's my word is my honor now. In active addiction, it wasn't, and I wasn't reliable. And that's one thing that I can control is my reliability and my honor. And so that's exactly why. If I tell you I'm going to do it, it'll be done. Right.
I love it. Max, what do you think, brother? Something that rings. And we've got more than one, I know, but which one resonates?
Well, I've kind of was thinking about it, especially at the beginning when you brought it up. And I'm like, dude, I don't have a cool phrase or something that pops to mind like Brock did. So let me take a little different approach and tell you some things that I did, and don't think I'm crazy or whatever for doing.
We already know.
I would talk to myself. on a daily basis. For an example, I'd go to the gym, and before my set, I would be saying to myself, and this is funny, I'd be saying to myself in my head, I'm a monster. I'm a beast, right? I'm going to get this weight. Like, just watch me. I had to do that to kind of pump myself up. I'd be at home and I'd be like, hey, I'm going to attack this day. Max, you got to attack this day today. Like, let's have a great day. We're like these little mental and these conversations that I would have with myself was a big deal. And then I told you guys about like sticky notes and stuff that I put up, like, hey, you're worth it today, or, find something to be great in. Like, and I would just repeat this stuff in my head over and over and over, and I would start to believe it. I'd start to believe that I was the biggest, strongest dude in the gym, even though maybe I wasn't. I'd start believing that I was a great coach and I was doing things right, that I was a great dad, because I was putting that in my head. So there's a saying that popped in my head. It's whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. Okay? It's all about self-motivation and mind shifting and reps. So I remember Coach Doman at BYU. He had this thing where he would write stuff down. And I don't think he'd mind me sharing this, but he used to write down on a piece of paper over and over and over again, Brandon Doman, starting quarterback at BYU. Right? I have this little saying, and this might be a little embarrassing, but I had this little acronym, WQBE. And what that stand for was winningest quarterback ever.
That's awesome.
Even though I wasn't, I have the record at BYU for most wins, but it meant more to me than just football.
Yeah.
It meant like winning in life, winning in situations. So really dumb little things like that helped me a lot. And then I started saying yes to things that I would say no to, like just to get myself out there, and that seemed to help me as well. So whether you think you can or you can't, you're right, and that positive motivation to yourself was really big for me, even when it seemed kind of silly at times, talking to myself, but it seemed to work. So
I love it, man. It's freaking rad. I love it.
I'm writing that down on a shirt. I'm a monster. I'm a beast. Max Hall.
There you go.
I'm going to get this.
Dude,
and
I
you know what I
love
mean?
it,
I'd
man.
get those dumbbells and I'd say, come to daddy, baby. Come to daddy. We're going to get these dumbbells. You know what I mean? Just like pumping myself up. Not necessarily that I needed to, but I knew I needed that, PMA, that positive mental attitude to go forward.
I love it, man.
Let's hear it, Blue.
That's
What
so
you
rad.
got?
So for me, I'm taking a combination. One is the first thing when I'm doing something kind of scary or something hard, or I'm like feeling it. I use a motto from Mahatma Gandhi, and he says, be the change that you wish to see in the world. And I add, take your place. And that's kind of like that thing, because I'm like, if I'm going to make the change, then I've got to take my place. And I say that a lot myself, like, all right, this is you're up now, take your place. And that's a hard thing, because for someone that grew up feeling like he didn't quite belong, when I use the mindset of take your place, that's a hard. When I got called to serve as a bishop, I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't even know anything about the LDS religion here. I felt like a newcomer to this whole thing. They're using acronyms and stuff I didn't know, but I had a heart that was ready and be willing to make some change. And so I remember the very first time I had to get up and like do a meeting, I'm like, take your place. It was crazy, man.
Blue,
So-
when you about jumped out of that airplane, did you say take my place?
Dude, yeah. I was like, that was it, man. I was like, here we go. I wanted someone
Go,
to take
take
my
your
place. It was hard, man.
Love it,
But that's the
dude.
thing, too. And at the end of it, okay, at the end of whatever I've experienced, it's hard. And I gave this guy crap when I first heard this. That's the dumbest thing ever. But the more I've used it, the more I realize the power in it. After I've done something super difficult, I'll always sit there and just say to myself, just be. Because after that, like after you do something super intense, like all that stuff's going on, the heart's racing and stuff, I want to sit with that for a minute. I want to be like, I just did that. So if it's a race, if it's a speaking engagement, if it's, a heavy therapy session or whatever, I'll just sit there for a moment and think to myself, very profoundly, just be. Be able to be mindful about being in the moment. And so those are the things that I've used. You guys, those are fantastic. And what a great question, Lacey. Thank you for submitting that. But as we wrap this up, you guys, this is why the Agents of Recovery are here. We're here to help you. If you've got questions, submit them. We'll do these now and then because realistically, we've got some great topics under our belts, but these are your struggles. These are things that you want to know. And I think we've got a great panel here. I think that we've got great guys that Brock has assembled here to make this podcast what it is, to help get this into the ears of those who truly need it. And if you want more, check out Chase the Vase with Brock Bevel and Addict to Athletes podcast with yours truly here, Coach Blue, to get more. This is just one of the 3 that we do. Brock and I are talking, Max, about bringing all these into a conglomerate, making it a network, a recovery support network. Listeners, it's all at your fingertips. And take it from us. We're the Agents of Recovery. Boom.